You're listening to the Straight A Conspiracy Podcast.
Oh dear, KDO. Now we're really
man.
going to get into it. The biggest
This is a tough
emotion
one.
in school of all. The feeling of stupid. So it's interesting because we say, I feel stupid. And actually,
And that's true.
stupid is a feeling.
It's the feeling of shame.
Talk to me about shame. What is shame? So every emotion motivates certain kinds of behaviors. What is-
Yeah, right? So we talked about how when you're afraid, your blood rushes to your feet. You want to run away from something or hide from it. When you are angry, your blood rushes to your fists so you can fight somebody. When you're ashamed, when you're embarrassed, what do? Well, if you embarrass yourself in front of the whole school, what do? You hide your face, right? You put your face in your hands. You're like, oh my God, this is so terrible. I'm so embarrassed, right? You don't want anyone to see you. And in school, what happens is when you get a test back, say, and it has a terrible grade on top that is not what you want everybody to be seeing, what do? You hide the source of your shame, which in this case is the test. So you take that test and you shove it as far as you can into the bottom of your backpack, into the back of a folder, hopefully never to be seen again. Just like if you're embarrassed in the middle of the auditorium, you hope that your entire self is never seen again by any of these people. It's the same exact response, but that's a really, really counterproductive response
Inappropriate.
for getting ahead in something you're trying to learn.
Why is that, Katie? What is the key to getting really good at things? What's the key to effective practice?
Because the most important thing that you can do to get better is look at your mistakes, right? When you are working on something, and think about this, when you're learning something that isn't getting graded, say you're trying to learn an instrument or a new sport or whatever, every little thing isn't getting graded. So a lot of times it's easier in those moments to say, oh, okay, I'm not quite good at this part yet, but I'll just fix that because that's not working, and I'll fix this because that's not working yet, right? That kind of fixing we know how to do, right? We target the mistakes, we make them a little better. Piece by piece, you improve. But if you're in school and you take whatever test you're getting back, which is your best feedback, you got these ones right and these ones wrong. So that's what you need to learn still. And you shove it away, never to be looked at again. How are you supposed to get better?
Well, you can't.
You can't.
If you don't know what's not working, then how can you
and
improve?
You can't fix it. Exactly.
And the example that we give from, the real world that is the most dramatic of this is plane crashes.
Yeah.
Right? So the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, when a plane crashes, they get out all the wreckage, they lay it out, they listen to the black box flight recorder, and they spend years figuring out why did this accident happen and what do we need to do differently to make sure that this type of accident never happens again.
And they spread every piece out on the ground.
That's
every
right.
piece of it is all up for examination.
Yep.
Right?
And over time, what happens is that, because they keep on doing that, you're now safer flying mile for mile than you are walking.
Yep.
It's more dangerous to be on the street
as a pedestrian
than flying through the air.
That's right.
And that's because when you really are embracing and analyzing your mistakes, then you're constantly improving. And that's really the key to effective practice. It's what scientists call deliberate practice, right? You're deliberately trying to practice, but we call it fix-it, focus practice.
That's right.
Because you're focused on fixing it.
Yeah. But if you feel stupid, which
Yeah.
is how we interpret this when we're in school, then none of that practice ever happens. Because what do? Instead of being aware of emotions and the fact that they're playing a part in how our learning goes, we attribute the results to our own brains. So we get back that terrible test grade and we just go, well, that's because I'm stupid. That's because I'm bad at math. This is because I'm a terrible writer. Figures, I already knew it. There you go. And then we push that away, and then we don't get better over
Katie,
time.
can I share something with the group?
Oh, you can.
Can I talk about my feelings?
Yes.
Okay.
Hunter.
Thanks, Katie. So when I was in terms of my own feelings around school, I really identified as a science person, but I actually didn't feel very confident in math, even though I did pretty well in the class. And that's because there were certain kids I won't name their names, but I know very clearly, and you know very clearly who this kid's name was, who seemed to know the answer right away, and he seemed so smart. And
so you had unrealistic expectations, made an unfair comparison.
All of that, and there was a lot of insecurities there, a lot of just feeling like I wasn't good enough, right? And so then, when it came time, because I was in England, and then you prepared for A-levels, and so you would pick a few subjects that you were going to take. And so I knew I wasn't taking math, because there was no way that I could compete with those kids.
Right.
But I thought that I would probably take physics, because that was a science. But I was nervous about physics, because physics was the mathiest science.
Right.
And so I was like, this is... what am I signing up for here? This could go really poorly. So sure enough, I start taking the test, and the kid who shall remain nameless would show up to class with a cup of coffee and a newspaper and sit in the back row and drink his coffee and read his newspaper, because apparently this was so elementary for him that he was bored by it. So anyway, meanwhile, I'm there like dying in the front row, like stressed, so freaking out. And, I get that first test back, and I was like, it was bad. I just looked at the grade. I didn't need to know any more than the grade. I was like, that's bad. And so I would shove it in the back of my folder. Didn't want to see it. And then, second test comes back, same thing, in the back of the folder. And it started building up. And it started I could see that my physics grade was tanking. And, I really wanted to go to Harvard. That was my dream. And I knew that this was going to mess it up. So at a certain point, I took my little pile of shame, and I took the shame back to my room where nobody could see me. And then I got out these bad tests, and I looked at them, and I started to notice things that I hadn't noticed when I just shoved them in the back of my backpack. Like that my teacher had written on the top of the test, you seem to understand the material, but keep making careless errors. And then I started looking at what those errors were, and it turned out that the biggest problem was my handwriting. And that my 4s looked like 9s and my 1s looked like 7s.
Oh, jeez.
And so that what would happen is I would write down the numbers, but then I panicked, I'm nervous, I'm freaking out. And then all of a sudden I would write down all this chaos. The numbers would mutate from line to line. By the end, they'd messed up. But here was this problem that felt so powerfully like it was beyond my control. It felt like there was something wrong with me. It felt like the problem was my brain, and actually it was handwriting, careless errors, things that were very easy to fix and control. But that was a really powerful lesson for me, and I was lucky to, on some level, learn that in high school.
Early, yeah. Absolutely.
But that's the nature of emotions, is that, they create reality. Like when you are looking at that test, it may not be a line, but it sure feels like one.
Yeah.
And, it really feels like there's something wrong with you when you're sitting in that physics class.
Well, we've also all been trained to, because of genius myths, because of what we believe that some people are just born smart, because of all these things, we've been trained to take each of these emotional experiences, which are simply just you were in this emotional state and this is what happened on that day. And we take them all as a reflection of ourselves, right? But in reality, it's not you, it's not who you are, it's just what you did that one time. And that is the hardest thing for people to separate as tiny students and as grown adults, that it is not a reflection of what you are as a person, what you're capable of. It's just what happened on that day. But until you can make that separation and really give that much credence to your emotions and what they can do to you in any given moment, of course, you just assume I'm an idiot at this. Like, there's no way I'll ever be able to get it. Yeah.
And that's a really unpleasant experience. In
fact,
it's
horrible. Nothing is worse than feeling stupid.
Yeah. And shame is really, I mean, maybe the most uncomfortable, unpleasant emotion.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the reason why we don't talk about it. We're not honest about when we're feeling that and bringing it into the open and talking about it, which is really the key.
But that's what shame does to you, right? Yeah. It makes you hide. And so there's no chance you're going to say, like, I think I hate this class because I feel stupid all the time. Well, great. Okay, so that's just an emotion, and here's what's going on. Now let's deal with it.
And so, a lot of what we do with our students is we just make them get out all those bad tests.
Yes.
We get out all that plane wreckage, we lay it out, and we start to figure out, okay, why did this mistake happen? Why did that mistake happen? And then start to see the ways in which you can fix those mistakes, use them to improve. And always what's amazing is the number of times that there's like a few core problems that come up again and again and again.
Yes.
So even though it feels like, you have this huge problem with math or with English, there are often a few core things that you don't know. Like, you don't know how to use commas. Okay, great. Like, let's fix that. And then once you fix that, then you see what happens. And then you're like, oh, wait, that made a big difference. Like, now things are better. What happens when we fix more things?
I thought I had a problem with all of English, and actually it was just commas. Now my grade is already that much better.
And so you just keep on fixing and fixing and fixing, and that's the real work of school, is this constant fix-it, focus, practice. And then once you're doing that work, then you start realizing that the feelings sort of start to resolve themselves in many senses, because you start to realize, like, all this time I was feeling like an idiot, and actually school is not about me. It's about what I do.
Exactly. It's just a bunch of material. I signed up for a class in college, maybe freshman year, that was supposed to be because I had been told that I was a humanities major. I signed up for like one of the easiest possible science classes to take, which was, basically like, sort of like monkey bio, like, history of human evolution and whatever. And so the, shopping class where you were allowed to just test it out was like a bunch of fun slides of people playing football and stuff that people do and do. And I was like, great, I'm in. And I signed up. And then the day after you weren't able to drop it anymore, the lecture opened and he was like, okay, so today's the examination of Australopithecus afarensis. And I was like, dun, dun, dun. And it was like, not at all what I was expecting. Yeah. And then I start to, so then of course I like, in initial reaction, fear, right? So now I'm like all, like not really breathing very well. And I look around me and I notice that like a lot of the people sitting in my vicinity are actually anthropology majors. And this is a requirement for them. And I'm not really sure how I ended up in this class. And I was freaking out. And I got through like 2 classes worth of every single word out of the professor's mouth was a minimum of 7 syllables. They all started with A. I was like, I don't know what this is. And my response was to, sorry, Mom, not go to class for like multiple weeks until I finally had, because what did I want to do? I wanted to hide myself. I don't want to sit through that lecture. I feel like an idiot. I don't know what he's saying. I can barely track even the difference in the words that he's talking about. And so, and this is like nowhere near the fun slideshow that was proposed on day one. I'm so annoyed. And so it was only because like the final was coming up that I decided, or like the midterm, that I decided I actually had to force myself to return to this stupid class and figure it out. And on the one day that I did show up to section, I arrive and the doors close, and it turns out that we're each supposed to go into the room one by one and identify a series of fossils, like walk around a table and have to point and talk about them with the TF. And I was like, my life is over. And so, but then I got into the room, and in talking with the TF, who clearly could tell that I was just like, I probably could do this, except was freaking myself out of the entire thing. We would like converse about the things, and by about halfway through, I realized like, oh, it makes sense. Like, that's a thigh bone because it's bigger than that other one that we said was a finger. Got it. Like, it wasn't that bad. Yeah. I just had worked myself into such a tizzy about this bizarre nomenclature that I couldn't possibly concentrate on what was actually pretty straightforward stuff, And so from that point on, it was fine. That way. But it felt horrible for the whole time. And that's the thing, is that's as soon as you've decided that you're an idiot because you can't catch on to something, that's just like the death sentence that you've given yourself for learning that entire thing. And if there weren't a final, I would have just closed that door forever and been like, I'll never need to know anything more about this. Forget it. Done. And
sounds like you would have whatevered it, Katie.
I would have.
Yeah. And so that's the interesting thing is that shame is such an intense and unpleasant experience, that what ends up happening is a lot of people are like, I cannot handle this feeling. I can't handle feeling stupid all the time. So what they do is nobody wants that. And so what they do is they say whatever.
Yep.
Right? So that's actually whatever is a reset. You're resetting how you feel about this subject and telling yourself it doesn't matter. I'll never use this anyway.
Well, you're giving yourself a new context. That's right. Just like the ideal would be to give yourself a context that says, this test isn't going to kill me. I just need to do this to get through it. But instead, you're giving yourself a different kind of context, which is that, like, I don't care about this anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right. And so we say in the book, whatever is clever. Right? And it is clever in the sense that it's a survival technique. You're removing those feelings of shame, the feeling of stupid, but in practice, it's not a super useful response because you're just sort of not dealing with those feelings. And it's much easier to deal with those feelings, and then you can re-engage with the facts of the subject, that it can be picked apart, it can be made sense of. Yeah. But the big thing that each of these emotions teaches us is that feelings are not facts.
Right.
And that there are facts and that they sit out there in the world, and then there are your feelings about those things.
Right.
And, however you may have felt for whether it's, the first 3 weeks of a class or for decades about this thing,
And about yourself.
That crucially you have the automaticity and the attention to go through and pick these things apart. But you have to manage the emotions.
Yep.
You have to manage them in order to have the attention available to be able to go and systematically pick apart anything that's difficult. And again, it's going to take a lot of practice to get really, really good. But the way that you make that practice most effective is by focusing on mistakes. So that changes, I know that in doing this work with you, and you've taught me so much, Katie O'Brien.
Because I focus on your mistakes?
Yeah, you do. You just heart. No, but working with you, because, that's the thing. Coming from science is not a place where we talk about our emotions in general, or we're very emotionally aware. Well, that's part of that whole
belief everyone has, that you can't be like a feely humanities person and also a rational scientist.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, my elephant has had to be retrained over the last 13 years to become much more emotionally aware and to learn to, rather than deny that my emotions are there, to harness and channel them so that my attention is driven onto the task in hand.
Yeah.
And so
make them work for you.
That's
Make
right.
them productive. Yeah.
That's right. And that's the point. You're stuck with your emotions.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
You're not going to avoid your emotions.
No matter how much you pride yourself on thinking you're a total robot.
Yeah.
You're not a robot.
Yeah.
You're a human being.
So you're much better off embracing those emotions, making sense of them, understanding why they are the way they are, and then harnessing them so that they are driving your attention to what you want to be getting good at.
That's right.
And that's a real skill. And the more you train that skill and the better you get at that skill, the more you can get to the place where you're really good at resetting your emotions and you're really good at finding the joy in learning anything. And, we have this phrase that I learned. I'm currently, like your husband, Dave, I'm currently exploring martial arts.
Yes.
Or rather, re-exploring them after certain traumatic experiences with judo as a young child. And, I really enjoyed this experience. I have this kickboxing teacher, and he came up to me, I was like talking to him after class. I was like, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you're not good at this. Like, you're really not good at this. But you're really open and receptive. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're good at knowing what you don't know and at taking in whatever is being said to you. And I said to him, beginner's mind, because as a teacher, I know what he's talking about.
That's right.
And he says, yeah, you always got to put the white belt back on.
Yes.
And so that's so much of what it's about is that, it's okay that you wander into a subject or some new area. This is the experience of life. You're constantly going to not know anything that's going on.
There's literally no reason I should have known what an Australopithecus afarensis was when I walked into that room. It was completely unreasonable of me to get mad at myself for not knowing what that was. never heard that in my life.
Of course.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And it's just being okay with that and recognizing that you're an explorer.
Yes.
And you're in a totally new environment. And so what's appropriate is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, hey, I'm here. I know nothing. And that's great. I'm excited to learn from all of you.
Yep.
And the thing is that you take any human, no matter how impressive they are, and they're going to not know more things than they know.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much to know.
Absolutely. But particularly because of that, you can't ever, bring it down to just this coarse statement about yourself. I'm stupid, or I am stupid at this thing, or I am not good at this. None of that is true. It's just where you are right now.
That's right.
You just are a beginner at the moment. And somebody else sitting next to you might be a little bit ahead of you, but they've just been practicing it longer. And that is it. And really, that's all that emotions boil down to, is just helping yourself to separate statements of fact about yourself and who you are from just statements about how you're feeling and where you are today.
That's right. And so the point is that, you can approach everything with a spirit of curiosity and discovery and being totally cool that you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and that's the best thing you can do for your authenticity and for your attention. Yep.
Thank you for listening to The Straight A Conspiracy with your hosts, Katie O'Brien and Hunter Motz. While Katie and Hunter are the faces of this podcast, they couldn't do this on their own. They have been lucky enough to have a group of dedicated people help them to get these ideas out there. Brian Jennings, a media literacy expert and author from Rhode Island, edits all of the podcasts. Andrew Hunt in LA helped film and record them. Mandy Ainsley in Johannesburg, South Africa, created a better website. And Josh McKenty, a marketing guru from New Zealand who wishes that he had this book when he was a kid, is devoting his time and energy to make the message of the Straight A Conspiracy accessible to everyone, everywhere. And you can help too. To find out how, visit thestraightaconspiracy.com. It's time for everyone, everywhere to know their own potential and get equipped with the tools to unlock it. While Katie and Hunter love books, they are also screenwriters, directors, and actors. Josh McKenty had the idea to make a multimedia online version of the Straight A Conspiracy. We're calling it the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp. It's the one-stop shop to onboard humans into the 21st century. It will be entirely digital so we can distribute it to millions of people that much faster. If you want to support the podcast and this movement in an easy way, simply visit thestraightaconspiracy.com and click on the Amazon affiliate link before you make any purchase. Amazon will give us a piece of that sale. More money means more podcasts, and more money for a project we're very excited about, the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp.